Ladies and gentlemen, if I can just have your attention, please. Thank you, Professor Anne Brewer. My name is Anthony Enactus. I'm from CPA Australia and I've been associated with Enactus for a number of years, and it's a great privilege to be part of, obviously, the events of today, but also this afternoon's panel where we're going to hear from the alumni, if you like, of fellow students who have gone through the Enactus journey. And when Judy contacted me, we thought it'd be a good idea to sort of probably learn from them around what does tomorrow morning look like, what does next week look like, what does next month look like in terms of how best to leverage the experience and insights gained through this wonderful program. So look, without any further ado, I am going to introduce our panellists and then basically have them just introduce themselves very briefly as to where they were and share some tidbits with you, and hopefully leave about 5 or 10 minutes worth of time where you can just hopefully poke and prod them and gain some hopefully some gold nuggets, as I like to describe them as, for you to go away with to your respective landscapes. So without any further ado, we've got Calvin Coyles, we've got Joe Newton and Jessica Humes, and they're all esteemed alumni in their own right. And I'll start with Jess, to my closest, if we can, and just share where you've come from, the university, the team, and what you're doing for a job, and then I'll see where it takes us from there.
Thank you. So my name is Jessica. I work for Unilever Australia, and I am an assistant brand manager looking after Streets Ice Cream. So I think it's a pretty great job. I spend most of my time working on Golden Gay Time. It definitely brings a lot of happiness into the day, and I basically get to spend my life trying to work out how to make people laugh and smile when they think of our brand. So it's a great job to have. I'm fresh out of the Enactus waters, so I was an Enactus student for 4 years out of my 5 years at university, and I only graduated at the end of last year. So my 4 years in Enactus allowed me the privilege to attend 2 different World Cups in Beijing and London, and also be a speaker in London. And that was an incredible experience in giving me the opportunity to present to large and esteemed audiences for my presentation skills, but also, of course, the vast majority of time is working on the projects and getting a thorough understanding of how the world works, from community organisations to yourself in a team environment, all the way up to working with corporate advisors, with the business advisory boards, and working on those relationships.
Thank you. Joe.
So I was a member of Enactus UNE, so that's the University of New England, for the majority of my undergrad and postgrad, so that was 2010 to 2015, as a team member, then a project leader and presenter at the Enactus World Cup in Mexico in 2013, and then I stepped back into more of a mentoring role. Currently, I work for Agriculture Victoria as a research scientist, and that's just my day job. I spend a considerable amount of my time pursuing my other passion, which is the promotion and advocacy for young people in the agricultural space, and I do that mainly through the Young Farming Champions program and as chair of the Youth Voices leadership team.
Fantastic, Joe. Thank you. Calvin.
Thanks for having me. So my name is Calvin. I'm a graduate of UWA, University of Western Australia. I was there from 2010 to 2012. And then when I left university, I was on the business advisory board of Saif Curtin back in the day. And upon graduating from UWA and Enactus, then went up and set up my own company called Wild Success. We're now in 80 countries around the world. And I can't stress to everyone here as a student that every single thing that you learn by going through Enactus is the same things that we've used to now grow a multi-million-dollar business from scratch, and it's the same thing we teach our clients on how to do as well. And so every aspect of the process of trying to create these projects from scratch is what we do day in and day out, and it doesn't change. The stakes just get a little bit bigger. And so yeah, it's been a phenomenal journey of going to the World Cup. And if you haven't been to the World Cup, go to the World Cup. It just makes everything that we do make so much more sense, and you get a real flavour and a vibe for what's possible. If you're fortunate enough to be the winning team, excellent. But if you're not, do whatever you can to get there, because like coming to the Nationals, you get a a different vibe for why you do the projects and what's possible. When you go to the World Cup, it just sets a whole new benchmark for what's possible in your life. And it gave me such an incredible sense of positivity and also a sense of inspiration of what's capable when you put so many young people together with a common purpose and an aim of working together on these projects. It's really remarkable what we get to do as an organization. And to be part of that, and as part of the judging team as well, your contributions and support help us, but also the students, to be able to steer the ship in such a powerful way. And so, everyone comes together. It's such a powerful project to be part of.
Calvin, you've got to learn to be a little bit more enthusiastic. Golden Gay Times, I've just discovered the ones with the biscuit now. OMG, like seriously. Anyway, I am a marketer's dream, I confess.
If you have any ideas, always happy to hear them.
I'll just keep putting the signs up at the point of sale and I'm yours. Especially 2 for 1, that's the accountant coming out of me. In terms of, it's all about reflection sometimes, and sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And I suppose for you, whilst you've shared your successes, albeit your journey, what would you do differently if you had your time again? So not just within the program itself or the participation, but what would you have done differently for the remainder of your time at university than what you probably did? Jess?
I forgot to mention that I'm from the University of Sydney, so I think what I have learnt in my very short time in the workforce is that you have to pick up and go with the projects. When you're in a business environment, like Calvin said, the stakes are higher, and you have to find a way through to deliver what you've been asked to deliver. And I think if I went through Enactus again, I would have more of that can-do mindset and the focus on scale and how to make things bigger, faster. Because we love to test and learn in Enactus, we love to do pilot programs, and of course you need your needs assessment. But I think that we often got stuck at that stage of testing and testing and testing without just going for gold and showing the world what we're capable of doing. And I think that's one of the amazing benefits of World Cup as well, is that it exposes you to all the projects around the world, the best in class examples of how they've taken their projects national or international, and they've improved their scale dramatically because they've got the right idea, but you have to have the guts to actually go after it.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you. Joe?
I always say that my biggest regret about Enactus is that I didn't actually join until my 3rd year at university, because in joining Enactus for perhaps the first time in my university experience, I found like I'd found my tribe, a team of like-minded young people that really were passionate about doing more than just having drinks at the pub and getting a degree. And so having that team of like-minded individuals really gave me the confidence and the support network to try and make a change in the community. And I'd probably agree with some of what Jess has said, that if I had my time again, I would have been more proactive in seeking out support and mentors early on to help with that growing and scaling of projects.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And to add on that, a couple of things. From a leadership perspective in Enactus, I think one of the lessons that I learned at UWA was we had quite a big team, but in reflection, you could probably count on one hand, or certainly 2, the amount of people that were serious enough about the project to give it 20, 30 hours a week. And realistically, that's the investment that's required to grow an incredible team. So in reflection, now running my own business where you have to pay people as opposed to asking for volunteers, I would go for a smaller team. And so if you have a smaller team, it's a really good thing because you can rely on them a lot more than having a big team that doesn't really do anything. And so going for quality, not quantity, in terms of people in your company makes a huge difference. That'd be number one. And number two would be, there's a lot of talk, and I've heard it today, and we were also part of it when we were part of Enactus, which was, prototyping ideas. The best way to prototype an idea is to get out there and sell it. And if people buy it, it wins, and scale it. And if people don't buy it, then don't do it. And there's a tendency, I think, as young people, and this is just a millennial thing, which is that we want new projects and exciting projects. And we heard of projects today that have been going for a couple of years. We don't need new projects. If you've spent the time, energy, and effort and years of time to build something that works, scale it. You don't have to have a new project every year. There's no point in just innovating for the same purpose. It's better to apply that same discipline in execution and scalability. I'd love to see more of the projects national. I think it's so easy to do that when you start thinking beyond yourself. And so more collaboration across universities would be really powerful. And I know that's a key goal for the leadership team at Enactus nationally and internationally. So doing more of that within your unis. And there's so much more to be gained by complementing each other as teams, because we're all fighting for the same resources. We all want more money. We all want more people. We all have that in this room. If we worked more together, you'd be able to achieve a whole heap more.
Fantastic. In terms of relationships post Enactus, how easy or hard has it been to maintain, connection, if you like, with your Enactus alumni?
Well, opportunities like this are amazing. So I was at World Cup 7 months ago, and at my previous Nationals only 12 months ago. So I'm seeing lots of familiar faces in the room, and have been able to maintain the connection quite seamlessly. So if you're able to never leave Enactus after you graduate. Follow Enactus on LinkedIn, get engaged in the alumni community, and stay involved in the Nationals and World Cup processes, because it makes it very easy to have this annual reconnection with each other and follow each other through your careers. So Judy has been saying that this year has been the largest contingent of alumni attending the Nationals, which is amazing. And we can just keep building and building that community so that it's strong, and we can see each other through as we take the moral compass that we've established through Enactus and track it through our careers. This support network is really essential.
Thanks, Jess. Joe?
So when you graduate from university and move states, it does become hard to maintain relationships with the friends that you made at uni. And I will say that the people that I worked with and spent time with on Enactus, they're the ones that I probably see the most and spend the most time with, even though I now live in Melbourne. And I think as testament to that, I could see 3 of the other Enactus UNE team from 2013 who are in Mexico, none of whom actually live in Sydney, yet they're here today. So I think that's really testament.
I'm sure Mark would be more than happy to establish the Enactus alumni chapter in Melbourne sometime soon. Calvin.
This is something I really struggled with, because instead of going down a corporate path where you're still connected and you do those networking events, I went very much into solopreneurship and then building a team. And so that requires such incredible focus. I didn't really have a huge amount of the Enactus crew that were part of that. However, when I was starting up the business, a lot of the people that I was working with from Enactus were part of the people that helped me get the idea initially off the ground. And if it wasn't for those friends from university, I probably wouldn't be here today. But this is something that I'm really excited to come back on board with now with Enactus, is to start to create more of that community, because if you didn't follow that traditional corporate path, it's very easy to lose those corporate connections, because especially being in WA and we're on the road so much, it's really difficult to keep that community really strong. But hopefully now we have the ability to do that in a more powerful way as more alumni come back to the front. So,
yeah, and look, from a judge's perspective and a participant, like all the corporates that are here today, I think I call it the Enactus bug. It's one of those things that you get the call and you pretty much rearrange a lot of things to be here. And I think to Annabelle Duncan, the Vice-Chancellor amongst the crew, I mean, I'd love to see Universities Australia somehow champion this Enactus initiative across the greater landscape, where those numbers we see, we see 38 universities out of 38 participating, because to Calvin's point, we heard from Sydney University last year, whereby there were some great initiatives around migrants and kitchens and catering companies. And as I was sitting here as a judge today, if I'm not sort of talking out of school, I was sitting there going, wow, what collaboration could there be? Or is there a social enterprise site where corporates could start buying their socks from the Indigenous people and our corporate catering from a migrant kitchen or whatever the case may be? Like, where's the marketplace? And maybe that's the challenge for the next group. And I know there's some people from ECU here today that I had the pleasure of meeting recently. Jason, hi Jason, and our UNE colleagues from the past as well. So I'm addicted Enactus, and it's really a privilege to see the work you're doing and what you go on to do. I was just saying to, I think, someone before that I've got to be nice to you because you could be my next boss as well. So this is a great opportunity. So look, I'm going to throw this conversation to the floor. I love to think there's going to be enough questions to keep us going for the next sort of 10 or 15 minutes. The floor is yours, and you're Enactus people, so if I get deafening silence, watch out. Mark.
I love this because myself, the board, Judy, we're all extremely passionate about our alumni network. And I think having such talented alumni with us, I want to know from them, what is it, if you could do one or two things, what would be the one or two things you would do to activate our alumni network, given that we're at a fairly sort of, embryonic stage of, we know it's a great idea, we want to do it, we're working on our, database and all these things, but what comes to your minds as what you would do in our shoes to really elevate the alumni network and use it to promote the awareness of Enactus, which we still think is too much of a best kept secret, if I'll be honest with you.
Yeah. So a couple of ideas, if I can jump in. I think one of the things in the world that we live in is we need to be cross-channel. So LinkedIn's very powerful, but again, if you're not part of that corporate space, which I certainly wasn't until I came back and I had to re-update my profile after 5 years. And so working on Facebook and working on LinkedIn, and we've already talked to Judy about how we can do that and making sure you keep access to that. One of the key challenges of keeping in communication with students that then go into corporate work is that you lose your email address, which is our primary medium. So being able to track those students more powerfully, I think, is going to be important. One of the key things is making sure you've got strong leaders, and the same as the universities here, in each of the critical states, that the annual conference is something that you might not be able to get to on an annual basis, but you can get to a quarterly conference for alumni. And I think now with the regional events that we're doing, that's a fantastic way of really engaging alumni in a more frequent way. And if you were to do that biannually or even quarterly, I think that would be quite powerful. And also finding a way for alumni to contribute financially back into Enactus. Yeah. Well, the board is an incredible way of doing that, and corporate sponsorship is excellent, but to put in the amount of capital required to be in that position is difficult, where I'm sure all alumni would love to contribute financially in whatever way they could, or at least be able to get their organizations more heavily aligned as well. So I think more frequent communication is going to be a powerful one. Having boots on the ground in each of the key territories is important. Having sort of state champions, I think, is a powerful way of doing it. And then finding ways for Enactus to still contribute to your professional life. As a mentoring relationship is powerful, as a career development relationship is powerful, and then also potentially doing some alumni skill development programs as well as a way of adding extra value would be some of my ideas.
I love the idea of having kind of guest speakers and things for alumni events to continue that learning and make sure we retain the Enactus spirit throughout our careers. I also think that we can give more opportunities for alumni to engage by establishing things like alumni advisory boards for the different universities, or asking alumni to become Enactus advocates within their organisations, get them to take up the mantle and turn their responsibility around to make sure that they're spreading the word as well, to stop it being the best kept secret.
Thank you. And I know Rabina Xavier from QUT. See, don't worry, Rabina, I'm not going to single you out too much. But even to Annabelle as well, I know that New England University of New England has the New England Awards, and it's tied to Enactus in part, I believe. I don't know whether it's tied to the AHEG statement of sorts, and whether that will be a hook for more universities to get involved if it was to form part of the non-academic transcript as such, but maybe food for thought in the future as well. Next question. Joe, you want to go across?
I don't have too much to add, as you guys have covered it so well, but I mean, just to point out, like at the moment, a lot of us do move, are quite transient in where we end up once we finish, and not necessarily in our home state or town. So having an easy way to update our details if we do want to be contacted, it would be paramount to ensuring that you can sustain an alumni network.
From the students. we'll go on.
I just had a question about, you mentioned something about going beyond that stage of testing. And how do you recommend, really like as university students, how do we push past that? And also another question about how would we really engage like that partnership between universities and like gain that community? Yeah.
Okay, so pushing past testing. First you have to know that you have a winning concept. So if you've established that in testing phase, take the learnings on board and make sure that you have the actions in place to accelerate straight away. Because I know that in a uni schedule, there's lots of competing priorities and people have a lot on their plate, and it's easy to say, oh, we ran that workshop day, or we ran that trial day, we did our post-analysis, and now we've got semester exams, so we're not going to look at it for another 4 weeks. What we need to think about is, at the end of that period, having a workshop or something practical where you put in place a very clear plan of how to move forward onto the next steps. And you can use your business advisory board and your academic advisory board to help you plan that out and make sure it's robust and it makes sense. Always with Enactus, collaboration is very important. So you might need to look at partnering with different organisations to help you take it to the next level. If I think about the projects I worked on, we have at Sydney Uni a project called Culinary Tales, which has been running for numerous years. We were always looking at how to take it national. We didn't have the ability to do it ourselves within the team because we're all Sydney-based, so it was finding the right partner in other states who could take our model on board. We could pass on our learnings and our trainings, and we knew it was replicable, and hand it off to them to start themselves. And then, sorry, what was your second question?
The university relationship.
Oh, okay. I think when you're looking at collaboration, the best way to get someone on board is to convince them that your goals are aligned, that you're after the same thing, that it's a win-win situation. So before you meet with your university to propose them something like a grant opportunity, well, if you're asking for a grant or asking for support from one of the different teams within the structure, do your background research, ask a few questions with the context that you already have, and find out what they're trying to achieve, and then marry up your goals and create a convincing presentation based on that.
Great. Joe?
I'm not really sure how much more I can add, but you know, when you're trying to build a relationship with a new stakeholder or a new community partner, there is no substitute for face-to-face meetings and boots on the ground in their environment. You can only do so much over the phone or via email, and that learning from Enactus is something that's really carried through for me into the work environment.
Great.
As well. And yet Jess's idea of making sure that you get your team together at the end of exams to plan what you're going to do next so that you don't have a real lull in your activity over the uni breaks is a really good point as well.
Thanks, Joe. Calvin?
I think one of the biggest things is having courage to fail. I think there's a huge amount of pressure, particularly for university business students, that they put on themselves to have the right answer or to have it all perfect. And I want really everyone to understand that done is infinitely better than perfect, and that we are constantly failing in business all of the time. And most of the ideas that my team come up with fail, but it's the ones that win, we just tend to win more on the macro scale than we lose. But you learn so much through the failure process, and from an employment perspective, it shows so much more credibility for you to say, we actually executed on these 15 things and 13 of them didn't work, but the 2 that worked were really good. It shows that you have the capacity to go beyond and have that ability to really push for success. And so if it works, and if you've got your MVP, your minimal viable product worked, and you've done your lean planning, then execute and expand. and then let it break. Because if you keep it small, it'll never grow beyond anything, and it's actually harder to maintain something that's small than it is to maintain something that's big, because something that's in process builds momentum, it builds that encouragement, the team gets excited about growth and opportunities. So don't play safe. You're not part of Enactus, and you're certainly not part of a uni to play safe. You're there to make the mistakes here, because in the real world it costs money. Whereas it doesn't really have to cost you anything at this point in time. So don't be afraid to fail. And from a partnership and community perspective, one of the big things is that don't underestimate yourself and overestimate everybody else. We tend to, as Enactus students, think that the world around us, that everyone's got their stuff, for want of a better word, figured out. When in reality, most people have no idea what they're doing in business, and that doesn't matter. And I'm sure many of the people that are judging today would say the same thing. And so if you have courage and you have confidence and you have the willingness to start up the conversation and you want to add value and you're committed, that is infinitely more valuable than knowing what you're meant to be doing. And so always assume that you're adding more value, always come from a place of adding more value, find a way to create a win-win, and then it'll take care of itself. But don't undersell yourself and really go after the bigger players. Don't go after who you think you can get on board as a partner, go after who you'd love to have on board as a partner, because I promise you, if you put it out there, there's very few people that want to say no to a uni student that in their free time is trying to change the world, right? And I think that we can get so much more latitude with that idea.
Great.
Jess, a question for you, Jess. One of the challenges for the students is bridging that gap from being a student to actually working. I noticed that you're working for one of the corporate partners of Enactus. Did Enactus, or did your link with Enactus help in that transition?
100%. That's how I identified who I wanted to work for. So the very first World Cup that I went to was in Beijing, and the Unilever CEO was there to deliver the keynote address, Paul Pullman, and he spoke with such passion about Unilever's sustainable living plan, and I was like, this company gets it, that's what I want. I want to work for the company that can offer me the opportunity to change business forever. And so I spent the next 4 years making sure Unilever would hire me.
Yeah, if I might ask a question directly to Joe.
Sorry, where's the question?
Over here. Having a passion for agriculture and being in it all my life, I was interested in your views of it. How do you get the Enactus, philosophy out into the country, particularly some of the regional campuses? Be it Wagga, Orange, Longarong, all those places across Australia. Have you thought about that?
Well, I studied on a regional campus myself, and I was doing a favour to a friend when I went to my first meeting. I'll be honest about that, but all it took was one event to have me hooked. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about my Enactus team was that we weren't all business students. We were psychology students, education students, and a couple of ag kids thrown in for good measure, and it brings a diversity to your team. And the project that I spent most of my time working on when I was at Enactus was the Farming Futures project, which was about showcasing and highlighting career opportunities in agriculture and pairing graduates looking for seasonal staff, or companies that looking to hire graduates or seasonal staff with students looking for summer work or jobs on graduation. So although ag and Enactus might not feel like initially a really good fit, the principles that Enactus underpins Enactus actually really helped with in terms of the design and delivery of the project. And then I don't think that there's any reason why there can't be other opportunities in regional campuses to look at, okay, agriculture is such a major part of the economy of most of these communities. Where are the opportunities to better align projects in the agriculture space?
Great. This one down here.
A question for Calvin. What has been the main difference between starting a business at Enactus and starting a business in the real world, for want of a better term?
Great question. What I would say, some of the biggest differences are that In Enactus, we have the opportunity to really focus mostly on a human output and an outcome for the individual as opposed to the economic output. And making money is a very important aspect of Enactus, but it's not the primary driver. When you start up a business and you have no seed capital and it's just your own money, so much more of your emphasis is on driving a dollar. And I'm very fortunate that I was able to marry the two of those principles because we work in personal growth and business growth. And so everything for us is about passion first. And we use the Walt Disney phrase, which is we don't make movies to make money, we make money so we can make more movies. So in the real world, and I want to say that there is really no separation. What you're doing is the real world, but there just is a much heavier reliance on driving sales, especially in the micro space of your $0 to $1 million. That space is so much more governed around the economic viability of an idea, and most businesses can't survive off grants and funding, and so they have to rely on the actual of making money. That would probably be the biggest factor. And the easiest way for you to test the validity of a project is, did it actually make you money this week? Because if it didn't make you this money this week, you probably didn't eat. And that's the reality. You become an impoverished student that needs help from Enactus, right? Like on the flip side. But everything else outside of that, other than there being a real pressure on the numbers, everything outside of that is almost the same. The passion, the amount of work, the energy, the teamwork, the collaboration, all of that stuff serves you so well. They're just essential skill sets. They're so transferable. And when I graduated 2010, 2012, 2013, most people were heading down that corporate path, and it's an incredible path to go down. I would say that there's so many more opportunities in 2018, 2020 for you to also look at launching your own business. And that's just a viable opportunity as what it was. It's now just as viable opportunity as getting a full-time job. And so it's so exciting to see the possibilities for young entrepreneurs coming out of the Enactus program that have had a 4 or 5 year breeding process of becoming entrepreneurial.
Thank you.
Last question, because Jeremy's standing there. There we go, at the back there. Just here, Jeremy, or we got one here. I hope I'm. Oh, either or.
A question for anyone on the panel. How can you identify when is the right time to retire a project from Enactus?
No one likes to retire a project because it seems like it's admitting defeat. Like, oh, we tried so hard and it didn't work. And I don't know whether I saw many projects get retired anyway. I think that you need to have the passion in the team to keep it going because it requires so much work to make it happen. So if you had someone driving a project because it was their passion project and they'd built a team around it, and that person left and no one was willing to take up the mantle, then maybe you can't force something, maybe you can't force it to continue because it's not going to have the natural motivation behind it that it needs and deserves. So that could be one reason.
Joe?
And I think the other reason, and definitely the more positive outcome that you should be striving for, is that you're retiring a project because you've made yourself redundant, where you have developed succession planning and sustainability models that project is now capable of running by itself and still delivering on the initial goals that you established for the project. And I can see Annabelle's over there in the corner, so I'll give a little plug. The Farming Futures Careers Fair and Dinner will run this year for its 8th year, and Enactus stepped aside from their involvement in that project a couple of years ago.
Wow. Well done. Calvin?
It's a really good question. From a sustainability perspective, one of my mentors that actually was an Enactus Business Advisory Board member and still is actually for UWA, Dwight Clark, incredible man. He said to me once, he says, Calvin, a baby doesn't learn how to walk until they're 1 year old, and you certainly don't leave them alone at 1. And so he was asking me about sustainability, and I was like, after a year, you'll be self-sufficient. And he's like, well, that just doesn't exist in the real world. And so I want you to have a 3 to 5 year time horizon on projects that the goal should be to make it fully self-sufficient after that window, not before that window, because it takes that long to get an idea economically up off the ground. On the flip side, great book by Jim Collins called Good to Great, and that is if it's not a great project, don't settle for good projects. And there's a great book by Mark Manson. It's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F. And our rule as a team, because there's so many good ideas, and we will often as a team, as a group Enactus, will self-sabotage because we'll go after too many good ideas as opposed to really executing on great ideas. And that our rule is, if it's not an F yes, it's a no. Right? So if you don't go, yes, I want to do this project, then it's a no, because you can't waste your resources. There's only so much you can actually get done. And so kill a project early rather than waiting for years and years and years to let it go. Because if you lose a team leader that's responsible for it and there's no succession plan, I was speaking to Judy last night, a replacement plan is not a succession plan. Succession plan is we're building somebody up to take over this project. A replacement plan is they've left, who can take over. And so if you don't have the passion, don't continue it. It's okay. That happens in all aspects of business. But if you can, get it to the point where it is fully self-sustaining, and the best way for that to happen is for it to be making some money so that it can fully, take care of itself.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Calvin, Joe, and Jess. Now, Jess, I like you even more because of the gay time, but if you stop making banana paddle pops, we've got something to talk about.
I'll pass it on.